In your average mystery story, the draw is to watch the detective slowly unravel the threads behind a crime until we, as the readers, know the whodunit, why done it, and how done it. This is generally done through a series of logical steps and deductions made by the detective, and if done well, the process should be impressive to read. This is not the case for Spectre. The police of this world are actually competent. So, more often than not, the police will have already correctly solved the crime before our protagonists arrive. Even in the cases where they haven't, Kotoko, our lead heroine, can talk to ghosts and yokai. So, regardless, the whodunit and howdunit are often solved without much effort. What's the draw of the story then? Well, sometimes it's to figure out the why done it, and sometimes it's because the truth isn't an acceptable solution to the mystery, so our protagonists have to come up with something plausible and logically consistent while still lying. Does this work? And is the story worth reading? Well, that's what I hope to answer in this video. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present my review of Spectre. In Spectre, we follow two leads. Kotoko looks like Cardcaptor Sakura or some other frilly magical girl, but is decidedly less innocent. And by the way, she's 19 for most of the story, despite how she looks. When she was 11, she got kidnapped by yokai, and was made their goddess of wisdom in return for losing a leg and an eye. With her new title of goddess, she gains no special powers other than the ability to see yokai and touch ghosts, but is nevertheless responsible for solving their disputes and preventing any unpleasant interactions between them and humans. Like, don't let the ghost with the steel beam clobber too many people to death. Her boyfriend, a term I put in air quotes since he kind of got forced into it, is Kuro, a grad student who's eaten the flesh of two yokai, and is now immortal. He tends to get reluctantly dragged along in all of Kotoko's escapades, and often acts as a meat shield in a very literal sense. Now then, what type of story do we get from these two? Well, there's loosely three types of story arcs. First, we have ones where a yokai or ghost did some terrible stuff and Kotoko needs to figure out a plausible explanation for the crimes that doesn't include the supernatural. For various reasons, having black magic or the supernatural as a solution to a crime is slightly problematic. These arcs have a real sense of tension. People die, the villain is compelling, and Kotoko's deductions and bullshitting skills are pushed to their absolute limit. Then, we have ones where Kotoko is trying to figure out the motives behind crimes, which are much more standard mystery fare and tend to be short. Finally, we have Kotoko and Kuro faffing around, which is pretty entertaining in its own right because these two have great chemistry. I've often seen this series tagged as romance and mystery, but really, comedy and drama is much more accurate given the story's focus. So, why might you want to read Spectre? As I see it, there's two main draws. First is Kotoko's character. The difference between her outward appearance of a pure young girl and her actual personality, sharp-tongued, mischievous, and horny, makes for great comedy. She can be quite obnoxious to others, but always in a way that is amusing to the readers. Her wit and deduction skills match the best detectives out there, but she really isn't interested in pursuit of the truth, and her amoralness and willingness to bullshit is quite refreshing. On the flip side though, her pursuit of Kuro is quite endearing. Kuro may play the straight man to her more absurd antics, and often deflects her more direct advances, but it is clear that both of them really care for each other, and the mix of their verbal sparring and genuine tender moments is pretty perfect. Honestly, half the story's charm comes from Kotoko. Now, unsurprisingly, the other main draw for Spectre is the quote-unquote mystery, or perhaps a better word for it is rational fiction. The idea that, hey, we have this seemingly inexplicable crime related to the occult, that now needs a rational, if potentially false, explanation, is a really nice twist on the mystery genre conventions. The concept is not entirely novel. Yumi Neko has done something quite similar, but honestly, if a story is at all comparable to Yumi Neko, it's doing pretty well for itself. Also, the key conceit behind the rational fictions in Inspector is flipped, and how the correct answers are judged is quite original. I don't want to go into too much detail to avoid spoilers, but suffice to say if the whole story had the same level of quality as the first rational fiction arc dealing with Steel Beam Nanase, then this would be my new favorite series. That brings us to the biggest weakness of the story. You see, aside from the first chapter, the first 6 volumes of Inspector are devoted to Kotoko and Kuro trying to deal with a vengeful ghost called Steel Beam Nanase. And this is a great arc. Then though, we get 3 volumes of short mysteries that are solved in 1 or 2 chapters along with a bit of slice of life. These chapters aren't bad per se, but they completely lack any of the tension that existed in the preceding 6 volumes. The short mysteries that are solved just don't have time to develop into anything interesting. And the slice of life chapters are cute, but don't develop the characters as much as I would like. Picture getting on a roller coaster and having it turn into a merry-go-round halfway through. The pacing just feels completely out of whack. Volume 10 does return to a second more serious conflict, with the main antagonist from the first arc returning, so that's shaping up to be much more interesting, but the lull between was honestly painful. I could easily see it losing some readers. My only other complaint is a more minor one. The story skips over a 2-year period between the first and second chapter. In that period, Kotoko and Kuro start dating, and being a fan of their relationship, I would really have liked to see a few more flashbacks from that period. Maybe we'll get that later. A guy can hope. In conclusion, would I recommend reading Inspector? Well, absolutely for volumes 1 through 6. The first story arc is great. As for the rest of it, well, at the time that I'm writing the script, the next arc with the main villain is only in its infancy, so it's difficult for me to say if this story will be returning to peak form. If you get to the end of volume 6 and love Kotoko as a character, then yeah, keep reading. Otherwise, there's nothing too special in the next couple of volumes, so maybe leave it there. Also, do bear in mind that this story doesn't have any of the same type of appeal as a mystery story, so don't go in expecting that. If you've already read this and are looking for something similar, I would highly recommend Yumineko no Nako Koro ni, which also has an incredibly interesting way of dealing with fantastic elements in mystery. Anyways, thank you for listening to my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers!